It started with a scream in the middle of the night. March 1971. The small town of Fouke was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. A few hundred residents, dirt roads cutting through pine forests, dogs barking in the distance, and the heavy quiet of rural Arkansas nights. But on that particular night, the quiet broke. Inside a small house on the edge of a town, a family had been asleep for hours when the scratching started. At first, it sounded like branches dragging against the walls. The father ignored it, and it happened again, longer this time. Deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He sat up in bed. Something was outside. Not a raccoon, not a stray dog. The sound was too heavy. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the house. The wooden boards creaked as something brushed against the outside wall. The man reached for his flashlight and moved toward the window. That's when the scream came from his wife. Not a startled gasp, a scream of pure terror. She had seen it first. Standing outside the window, towering in the dark, was something that looked like a man but wasn't. 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair, arms too long, eyes reflecting the porch light like an animal's. The creature didn't run. It didn't hide. It simply stared into the house. And in that moment, the quiet town of Fouke realized something terrifying. Whatever was outside that house was not human. The scream woke everyone in the house. The man rushed to the window, heart pounding, flashlight shaking in his hand. His wife stood frozen near the bed, pointing toward the darkness outside. For a moment he saw nothing, just the faint glow of the porch light cutting across the yard. Then the beam of his flashlight moved, and it hit something. Standing just beyond the window frame was a towering shape, massive shoulders, dark, matted hair. Its body seemed almost too wide to be human. The creature turned slightly and the light caught its face, flat, shadowed, with eyes reflecting back like an animal caught in headlights. The man staggered back. Whatever it wasn't just large. It was wrong. Outside, the creature moved slowly along the wall of the house, its long arms brushing the siding. The boards creaked again as its weight shifted. Then came the smell, an overpowering stench that flooded through the open window. Rotting meat, wet animal fur, and swamp mud all mixed into something so strong it made his stomach turn. The man grabbed his rifle. He stepped onto the porch, sweeping the flashlight across the yard. The beam caught the creature just for a second as it moved across the edge of the property, its arms swinging low, its body moving with a strange, loping stride. Then it disappeared into the tree line. Silence returned, but the night no longer felt safe. The man didn't sleep again. Instead, he waited for morning. At first light, he stepped into the yard to see if the nightmare had left any trace behind. It had. In the soft dirt beside the house were footprints, huge ones, each nearly 3 times the size of a human foot. The prints led away from the house and into the forest that surrounded Fouke. Within hours, the story spread across the town, and before the day was over, the sheriff's office in Miller County would be called to investigate something no one in the quiet woods of Arkansas had ever expected to face. A monster. Not a legend, not a rumor. Something real. Something that had come out of the woods and stood at the family's window in the middle of the night. By mid-morning, the quiet roads around Fouke were no longer quiet. Word spread fast in small towns, especially when the word is monster. Neighbors began showing up one by one. First a few curious residents, then more. Pickup trucks lined the dirt road as people gathered near the house, whispering, pointing toward the woods. trying to make sense of the enormous tracks pressed into the soft ground. The footprints were unmistakable. Each one was massive, far larger than any human foot, and spaced unusually far apart, suggesting a creature with an enormous stride. The toes were visible too, deep impressions in the soil that looked disturbingly human. Someone finally made the call to the sheriff. Not long after, a patrol car from the Miller County Sheriff's Office pulled into the yard, gravel crunching beneath its tires. Deputy officers stepped out and approached the tracks carefully. At first, they expected a prank, but the moment they saw the prints, the mood shifted. These weren't ordinary tracks. One deputy crouched beside the largest footprint and placed his hand inside it. His fingers barely reached halfway across the impression. "Whatever made this," he reportedly muttered, "is big." The officers followed the trail as it led away from the house. The prints moved across the yard, through a patch of brush and then toward the tree line. Branches were broken along the path and several small trees appeared to have been pushed aside rather than stepped out. It was the kind of disturbance you'd expect from something extremely strong. The trail continued for nearly 100 yards before disappearing into the thick pine forest surrounding the property. The woods there stretched for miles, dense, tangled, and difficult to navigate even during the day. If something had come out of those woods during the night, it could vanish just as easily. Still, the deputies documented everything: measurements, photographs, notes, because what they were seeing didn't match any known animal native to Arkansas. And the more they examined the evidence, the more one uncomfortable question began to form among the small group standing in that yard. If something that large had walked out of the forest once, how many times had it done it before? And more importantly, would it come back? By the time the sun set over Fouke, the story had already spread across half of Miller County. Some people believed the family, others laughed it off. A few insisted it had to be a large bear wandering too close to town. But the deputies who had seen the tracks were quieter about it. They hadn't said much after leaving the property. The footprints they measured didn't look like bear tracks. The stride was strong. The shape was wrong. Still, no one was ready to call it a monster. Not yet. Night fell heavy over the pine woods surrounding the house. The forest became a wall of darkness again, just like the night before. Wind moved through the trees in long, whispering waves, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked once, then went silent. Inside the house, the family stayed awake. Lights were left on, the rifle remained closed. No one wanted to admit it out loud, but every person in that house was listening for the same sound: scratching. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, sometime after midnight, it started again. A slow dragging sound along the outside wall. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The father froze in his chair. It was back. This time he didn't wait. He grabbed the rifle and stepped toward the window, moving slowly, trying not to make a sound. The porch light was already on, casting a dull yellow glow across the yard. For a moment, the yard looked empty. Then the light shifted across something huge. The creature stood near the corner of the house. Even from inside, its size was unmistakable. Tall, broad, covered in dark hair that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It wasn't just passing through. It was circling the house. The man stepped onto the porch, raising the rifle. The wooden boards creaked beneath his boots. The creature turned its head toward him. For a second, the two simply stared at each other. Then the man fired. The shot exploded through the quiet woods, echoing across the trees. The creature reacted instantly, but it didn't fall. Instead, it moved fast, far faster than something that large should have been able to move. It crossed the yards in seconds and vanished into the darkness of the trees. The forest swallowed it completely, but this time There was something different left behind, because when the echo of the gunshot faded, the man realized something chilling. The creature hadn't run in fear. It had run like it knew exactly where it was going, deep into the woods that no one in Fouke had ever fully explored. By the next morning, the story had grown larger than the small yacht when it had begun. What had started as a strange encounter outside a single home was now the only thing people in Fouke were talking about. At the diner on the main road, farmers and truck drivers gathered around coffee cups, leaning over the counter while the story was told again and again. Each retelling added something new: longer arms, glowing eyes, the terrible smell that lingered around the house. Some laughed, some didn't, but everybody listened because the sheriff's deputies had confirmed something important. The tracks were real, and they were huge. Soon, reporters began arriving from nearby towns. A few local newspapers had heard about the strange footprints and the creature seen outside the house. Cameras appeared, notebooks opened, questions were asked. One reporter described the prints as larger than any human foot and spaced nearly 3 feet apart. Another report mentioned the smell. A third wrote about the creature's strange movement, its long stride and the way its arms swung low as it walked. Within days, the story had spread far beyond the quiet woods of Arkansas. People began giving the creature a name: the Fouke Monster. Hunters started volunteering to search the woods. Teenagers drove down dirt roads at night hoping to catch a glimpse. And some residents quietly began locking their doors earlier than usual. But the most unsettling part of the story wasn't the size of the creature, it was the pattern. Because when investigators spoke to older residents of the area, a few of them admitted something they hadn't mentioned before. This wasn't the first time something strange had been seen near the forests outside Fouke. For years, people had reported hearing heavy footsteps in the woods at night. Sometimes they found large tracks near creeks. Sometimes they smelled that same terrible odor drifting through the trees. Most people had ignored it until now, because now the entire town knew something, walked right up to a house, looked through the window, and then vanished back into the forest like it had done it 100 times before. Within days, curiosity turned into something much bigger: a hunt. Word of the creature known as the Fouke Monster had spread across Arkansas, and people began arriving in Fouke from neighboring counties, some out of curiosity, others determined to prove the monster was real. Pickup trucks loaded with rifles rolled into town. Hunters carried flashlights, dogs, and camping gear. They gathered at the edge of the woods where the tracks had disappeared, staring into the dense pine forest that stretched for miles. If something that large was hiding out there, they intended to find it. Search parties formed quickly. Groups of men spread out along the dirt roads and creek beds, moving slowly into the woods while scanning the ground for tracks. At first, the forest revealed nothing, just pine needles, mud, and tangled underbrush. But as one group moved deeper into the swampy area outside town, a dog suddenly began barking wildly. The hunters rushed forward, and there, pressed deep into the damp soil beside a shallow creek, they found them again. Tracks, huge ones, even larger than the ones discovered near the house. The impressions were so deep it looked like something incredibly heavy had stepped there. Broken branches hung low over the trail, and a small sapling had been snapped clean in half. The trail moved through the trees in a straight line, cutting deeper into the forest. The hunters followed carefully, their flashlights sweeping through the shadows. Then something strange happened. The dogs stopped. Not just stopped barking, they refused to move forward. Several of them whined and backed away from the trail, pulling against their leashes as if something ahead terrified them. One of the hunters leaned down near the tracks and immediately recoiled. One of the hunters leaned down near the tracks and immediately recoiled. The smell was there again, that same overpowering odor witnesses had described, strong enough to make your eyes water, rotten, musky, almost chemical. Whatever had made those tracks had passed through the area recently, very recently, and as the men stood there in silent woods, looking down at the enormous footprints leading deeper into the forest, a realization slowly settled over the group. They hadn't found the monster. They had only found where it walked, and judging by the freshness of the tracks, the creature might still be somewhere very close. The deeper the search parties moved into the forest outside Fouke, the stranger things became. The land there wasn't friendly ground. Thick pine trees crowded the sky, blocking most of the sunlight even during the day. Beneath them, the forest floor was uneven and tangled with vines, fallen logs, and patches of swamp water that swallowed boots without warning. It was easy to get lost, and yet the tracks continued. The massive footprints moved through the forest in long, confident strides. Whoever or whatever had made them wasn't wandering blindly. The trail followed natural paths through the trees, avoiding thick brush, weaving around swampy ground like the creature knew every inch of the terrain. The hunters followed carefully. Flashlights swept across branches and tree trunks as they moved deeper, the smell growing stronger the farther they went. That awful odor hung in the humid air like something rotting somewhere nearby. One of the men suddenly stopped. He pointed toward a large pine tree ahead, high on the trunk, far above where a normal person could reach. The bark had been torn away in long, deep gouges, claw marks, at least 7 feet off the ground. The group stared at the marks in silence. If something had done that while standing upright, it would have been enormous. The trail continued past the tree and toward a narrow clearing where the ground turned muddy. There the footprints became even clearer, each one pressed deep into the earth. Then the wind shifted. The smell hit the group again, stronger than before. One hunter covered his nose, another whispered something under his breath. The forest had gone completely quiet. No birds, no insects. Just the faint movement of the wind through the pine needles. And then, somewhere in the distance, a sound, not loud, but unmistakable. A long, low growl rolling through the trees. The men froze. It came again. Closer this time. Every flashlight swung toward the dark wall of trees ahead, but the forest revealed nothing. Just shadows, just silence. Yet every man standing there had the same chilling thought running through his mind. They had been tracking the Fouke Monster through the woods for hours, but now it felt like the trail had changed direction, and the creature might be tracking them. No one spoke after the growl. The hunters stood frozen in the clearing, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels of light through the trees. The beams moved slowly across the trunks, the underbrush, the patches of swamp water reflecting faint glimmers back at them. Nothing moved, but the silence was wrong. Forests are never completely silent. There are always insects, birds, frogs, somewhere in the distance. Here, there was nothing. One of the men whispered that they should turn back. Another insisted they keep following the tracks. Before anyone could decide, something moved in the darkness, not close, but close enough. A large shadow passed between two trees at the edge of the flashlight beams. The movement was slow, deliberate, like something enormous shifting its weight. Every light snapped toward the spot. For a second, the forest looked empty. Then a pair of eyes reflected the light, low at first, then rising. The shape behind them slowly straightened. What stood there was taller than any man in the group. broad shoulders, arms hanging long and heavy at its sides, its body covered in thick dark hair that seemed almost black in the shadows. No one spoke. No one fired. The creature simply watched them. For a moment, the hunters saw it clearly enough to understand something unsettling. The creature wasn't acting like an animal startled by humans. It wasn't panicking. It wasn't even moving away. It was studying them. Then it stepped forward. The ground beneath it shifted with a heavy thud as its foot pressed into the mud. The smell flooded the clearing again, thick, foul, and impossible to ignore. One of the dogs began barking wildly, and then, with sudden speed, it turned and moved back into the trees. The men rushed forward instinctively, flashlights swinging through the darkness, but within seconds the forest swallowed it completely. The trail vanished again, and the hunters realized something unsettling about what they had just witnessed. They hadn't chased the creature away. The Fouke Monster had simply decided the encounter was over, and it had walked away, deeper into the endless forests surrounding Fouke. After the encounter in the woods, the search parties returned to Fouke with a story none of them could fully explain. Several men had seen it, not a glimpse, not a shadow. They had seen the creature standing between the trees, tall, covered in dark hair, moving with a strange, powerful stride. But despite the rifles, the dogs, and the dozens of flashlights sweeping the forest that night, the hunters had come back with nothing but stories. No body, no clear photograph, just the lingering smell of something that had stood close enough to watch them. Within days, Fouke changed. The town had always been quiet, but now a strange tension filled the air. People checked their doors before going to bed. Porch lights stayed on through the night. Parents warned their children not to wander too far from the house after dark. Yet the curiosity kept growing. More hunters arrived, more reporters, and with them came new sightings. A truck driver claimed he saw something large across a dirt road late at night outside town. A farmer reported hearing heavy footsteps. Another resident swore he heard something scratching at the side of his barn before it vanished into the woods. Each story sounded a little different, but they all described the same thing. Something big, something fast, something that seemed to move silently through the forests surrounding Arkansas. Soon the creature had a reputation. The Fouke Monster was no longer just a rumor whispered in town. It had become a regional legend almost overnight. But legends usually stay in the woods. This one had already stepped into someone's yard, and what made the people of Fouke uneasy wasn't just the creature existed. It was the growing feeling that it wasn't leaving. Because every few nights, somewhere near the edge of the town, someone would hear the same sound again. Slow footsteps moving through the darkness, circling houses, watching windows, as if something in the forest had grown curious about the humans who had moved so close to its territory. By now, the story of the Fouke Monster had gripped the town of Fouke like a shadow that wouldn't lift. Even during the day, people whispered about what had been seen in the woods. Farmers refused to work near the tree lines after dusk. Kids were warned not to stray from the road. The sheriff's office received more calls than ever, residents reporting strange noises, large footprints, or fleeting glimpses of something enormous moving through the darkness. Then came the attacks. Not lethal, at least not yet, but terrifying enough to leave a lasting impression. Dogs went missing, livestock were found dead, their bodies mangled, and sometimes the telltale footprints surrounded the scene. A few residents claimed their homes had been approached in the middle of the night, doors rattling as if something massive had brushed against them. One family living on the outskirts of town reported waking to the sound of their porch swing moving violently, though no one had touched it. Outside, deep impressions in the mud led into the woods and nothing came back. People were afraid to walk alone after sunset. The quiet town that once had been peaceful now trembled at the thought of the forest's unseen occupant. The deputies investigating the reports noted a chilling pattern. Wherever the creature appeared, it moved deliberately. It left no unnecessary traces. It avoided confrontation when possible, but its presence alone was enough to send humans scrabbling. And the thing that truly unsettled the residents of Fouke, the creature wasn't hiding. It wasn't sneaking around in fear of humans. It was watching, studying, waiting. The forest was alive and it had a guardian, a being that had made its presence known with terrifying clarity. For the people of Fouke, the message was unmistakable. The woods were no longer safe, and the Fouke Monster was still out there. As weeks passed, the Fouke Monster story drew attention beyond the town. Newspaper reporters from larger cities came to Fouke, eager to see the creature for themselves or at least collect eyewitness accounts. The sheriff's office was overwhelmed with calls, sightings, strange noises, and more massive footprints appearing overnight. Some of the tracks were clear enough to photograph. Others led deep into the swamp, disappearing into thick mud or dense pine forests. Deputies and investigators noted something alarming. The prints suggested a creature not only large but extremely strong, capable of bending saplings and breaking branches with ease. The townspeople shared stories of strange sounds at night, branches snapping, guttural growls, footsteps circling houses. Animals were especially sensitive. Dogs barked for hours at nothing. Livestock were missing or found maimed, and cats disappeared without a trace. A few brave hunters attempted to track the creature deeper into the woods. They reported encountering paths where every tree seemed deliberately disturbed, bent at unnatural angles, broken bark as if warning signs were left behind. One hunter swore he heard a deep, guttural sound unlike any bear or animal he had ever heard, coming from all around him, echoing through the swamp. It became clear to everyone involved that this was not a simple animal wandering around. It was intelligent. It knew the humans were there, and it seemed to be sending a message. The forests of Fouke were its domain. Even seasoned lawmen admitted privately that the creature was something beyond explanation. It had the strength of a bear, the stride of a man, and a cunning awareness that made tracking it almost impossible. The Fouke Monster wasn't just real, it was aware. And as the investigation continued, everyone realized something chilling. This creature didn't need to attack to instill terror. Its mere presence was enough, and it was still out there. Months passed, but the terror didn't fade. In Fouke, the Fouke Monster became more than a story. It became a legend. Sightings continued sporadically. Tracks appeared after heavy rain. Strange sounds echoed from the woods. Even decades later, residents swore they could feel eyes watching them when they passed the edge of the pine forests. The creature had disappeared from the yards, from the immediate vicinity of homes, but it never left entirely. It remained a shadow in the night, a reminder that some mysteries are too large, too powerful, and too clever to be explained. Researchers, cryptozoologists, and thrill seekers came from across the country to search the swamps of southern Arkansas. Some brought cameras, others brought dogs, firearms, or recording equipment. Few found anything definitive. Some captured fleeting glimpses or photographs of massive shapes moving through foggy swamps. Others returned with only footprints and stories. The Fouke Monster had become a symbol of the unknown, a creature that could vanish at will, outsmart humans, and leave only hints of its existence. But the fear it inspired was real, and the stories told by those who encountered it were etched into the town's memory forever. Even today, when the wind moves through the pine trees just right, when the cypress leaves rise from the water and fog blankets the swamp, locals say you can hear something large moving silently, watching, waiting. The Fouke Monster isn't just a legend of the past. It is the guardian of the swamps, a creature who reminds all who enter its domain that the forests of Arkansas are alive. And some nights, if you're very careful, very quiet, you might just see it.